And a lot of us are confused as to where we stand. And I've got to say at the outset, I'm a columnist for Human Events. I was a columnist for the Daily Caller for 5 years. Everybody knows that I love Donald Trump. Everybody knows that I think he's doing a superb job with his work, his first 100 days. But I don't want a trade war. Canadian Conservatives do not want a trade war. We do not want to see these tariffs come through. And I don't know if Donald Trump clarified the situation very much yesterday.
Can you clarify the Canada-Mexico tariffs? You had put that 30-day pause, but you just referred to
25%.
25%. When does it go into effect?
April 2nd.
April 2nd for Canada-Mexico.
Correct. And for everything.
Well, we have the fentanyl-related is a pause. If they can prove to the president they've done an excellent job, that's what they first do in 30 days.
Have you guys seen any
but then the overall is April 2nd. So the big transaction is April 2nd, but the fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard. If they have, then he'll give them a pause, or he won't.
So I don't know if we've satisfied the president on the border. There have been some movement made. We have a fentanyl czar now. I don't see 10,000 frontline personnel at the border yet, which Trudeau promised Donald Trump about a month ago now to get this extension at least. So the other day when you were on Fox Business, you were saying that you wonder why Donald Trump is so up on punishing Canada. Maybe it's all about Justin Trudeau. Do you think that's really what's going on here?
So I don't get it. Why he's so tough on Canada. I think a lot of it has to do with Trudeau, particularly his capture by the Chinese Communist Party. But the other thing I don't get is why aren't Canadians more upset with him? You have a more educated population than the United States, yet over the last decade, your quality of life has collapsed. If you look at the resources and you look at the number of barrels of oil per capita, you have 40 times the amount of oil per capita than the U.S. does, yet you pay a third more for gasoline prices. Your government-run healthcare, I mean, it's nice that it's free, but when you include out-of-pocket and what the government spends per capita compared to the U.S., it's 20 to 30% more. Let me ask you, if money was no object, where would you rather get surgery? Like, where would you rather get healthcare? Maybe some people say Canada, maybe some people say the U.S., but is it 30% more, and is it worth paying almost double the tax rate on average? And so I don't know if this is an all-out assault from an ideological front, in that the way that I look at Trudeau is he doesn't govern, and the Liberals, by and large, they govern for a narrative. They don't govern for an objective, right? Because you're not going to change the climate. You're not going to solve historical injustices, right? All you've done is destroy a country. And so, like the comment I made on GDP, in 2014, GDP per capita was about $50,000 US, and the US was like at 53. Now Canada's at 56,000 US, and when you factor in your inflation, that's a dramatic drop. And the US is at 83,000 a decade later. Like, why? Like, you have to ask yourself, why have we advanced so much more? And particularly in that decade, Donald Trump was only president for 4 years. 6 years, we had two were Barack Obama, 4 were Joe Biden, and they were devastating. We both went through COVID. So I don't know if this is personal, or it's to hammer home, or it could be as simple as around the Michigan area, the auto production, especially down the supply chain lines, there's a tremendous amount of manufacturing that's going on in Canada that he wants to see move back over the border to Michigan. And so I don't know why he's so aggressive. Whereas the flip side, Mexico has been one of the most destabilizing forces in the United States. It's a high degree of probability that their president is on the payroll of one of the cartels, right? And not only the president, every layer of government, and that we are looking at a hot war with Mexico, at least the cartels, So I don't know why we aren't harder on Mexico and we're not cutting Canada some slack, because Trump is a little bit dismissive of how good of an ally Canada has been over the years. I mean, you see in the movie Argo, you have the Canadian ambassador risking his life to get Americans out of Iran. So like there's a long history. Canada is a good ally, but you've destroyed your country.
Yeah, I think you're dead on with that. Now, the other day I heard you state that Canada's GDP has dropped by 20% during the decade of the Trudeau government.
At point, Canada's GDP per capita, when you adjust for inflation since Trudeau took over, is down over 20%. I mean, that is a death knell for a nation. He has destroyed the quality of life for the average Canadian. Housing is unaffordable. Groceries unaffordable. It has been absolutely devastating since he took over.
Does your research actually confirm that?
So so when you look at GDP per capita, right, you've gone from 53 to 50, just under 51,000 to just above 53, 54,000. When you factor in inflation, yes. Okay, your purchasing power parity is about flat with inflation when you look at GDP per capita and local, but that's not your purchasing power parity. That's not an apples to apples comparison. It's what is it in US dollar terms? What can you buy in goods from the rest of the world on an equal playing field? So when you factor in how much less your currency is with the inflation that you had, because, in this last decade, you've also doubled your national debt. Do you know what the deficit was in 2014 for Canada? It was $6 billion, 6 billion Canadian dollars, right? Yeah. And you had a year under Trudeau where it was 300. So it is just unbelievable how just 10 years ago, you guys were basically lockstep with the United States, okay, and having so much oil, right? And so if you look at how on average, what you pay per gallon of gasoline, it's like roughly $4 over the last decade. Saudi Arabia, so you have 4,000 gallons of oil per capita. Saudi Arabia has about 7,800, but they're paying like 65, 70 cents for a gallon of gasoline. Imagine how different your economy should be and your way of life would be without this massive liberal government overreach, without this war on fossil fuels to solve climate. What do you think life would look like in Canada without these liberals that you keep voting in charge?
Well, yes, and you called it the death knell for a nation. I think that's very, very appropriate. I do think there's a remedy, and that remedy would be to get rid of this liberal government. But that's the conundrum we find ourselves in right now. Like conservative-minded Canadians, small c or large c, are saying, Donald Trump, just stop the rhetoric for a couple of weeks so we can have an election up here, get rid of this liberal government, and which is on the verge of course, appointing or electing Mark Carney, a former governor of the Bank of England, as its new leader. And it's going to be a much rougher election than it was, say, a month ago when Justin Trudeau had first announced his retirement. And the polling is suggesting that the race is evening up, which I found astounding because the last 10 years have been devastating.